So this is the third video in which I would like to relate about the second case, which is about a traffic offense which proves again that there are serious problems as regards the Hungarian jurisdictional authorities. So all this, the reason of it, so all this started when I worked as a taxi driver. Since then I couldn't find a job connected to my law graduation. So then in 2009 I stopped and waited in my taxi vehicle for a period of 15 minutes in an area designated for the stopping of buses. I have to mention that I didn't leave my vehicle while I was awaited there. Meanwhile, I was awaiting in the above-mentioned area. The police authorities had been made photos about my vehicle staying there, and after 2 months I've got an official letter on which I was called upon to pay a fine of 30,000 Hungarian forints, since in their opinion I've committed an offense by breaching the rules of Hungarian highway code. Namely, I breached the rules of stopping and waiting with a vehicle. These rules with a vehicle in an area designated for the stopping of buses and trolleys. These rules are comprised in the article number 40, paragraph 5, point H of the above named decree, which are prohibiting the stopping and the waiting in the bus stop area of other vehicles than the bus, tram and trolleybus. I was surprised when later I read it through myself this decree, since in the same article 40 and paragraph 5 of the above mentioned Hungarian highway code, but under the point I of it, states that in the bus base and onto the traffic lines designated for buses, beside the buses and trolleys, the taxi vehicle is also allowed to stop. This fact proved definitely that the police authorities who wanted to find me didn't know entirely the rule on the base of which they started the offense action against me. With the occasion of the judicial hearing, after I indicated this to the judge, I was acquitted. But after this acquittal, the police authorities had been demanded for a revision of the acquittal, arguing that the area on which I stopped my car was a bus stop but not a bus bay. According to their definitions, the bus stop is an establishment which is designated onto the traffic lines designated for the proceeding of the vehicle's traffic, and so when the bus stops there, with this stopping, the bus obstructs the traffic proceeding in this traffic line. Meanwhile, the bus bay is an establishment developed outside of the traffic lines, and thus, when the bus stops on this area, it doesn't obstruct the proceeding traffic. Taking into the consideration these definitions, they stated that this establishment where I stopped with my taxi vehicle, it was a bus stop, and according to the Hungarian highway code, the taxi vehicle, it isn't allowed to stop on the area of it, but just on the areas of the bus base. When I read through this revision demand, I realized that the police authorities people issued this document without making themselves sure what kind of establishment was that in which I stopped my vehicle. since this establishment in which I stopped my vehicle is definitely a bus bay, tantamounting totally with the definition of the bus bay given by the police authorities in their revision letter. Namely, this establishment was developed in such a way that the vehicles stopping on its area aren't obstructing the proceeding traffic, since it was formed from the outermost line of the road, which out of the bus bay serves for purposes of parking, but not as a traffic line for the proceeding of vehicles. So when I stopped my taxi vehicle on this bus bay, I didn't hinder the flow of the traffic at all. Not to mention here that in the Hungarian highway code states clearly that the taxi vehicle is allowed to stop on the area of the bus bay and even on the traffic line designated for buses proceeding, which one covers much than a bus stop area. So by stopping on it, the taxi vehicle is allowed, consequently is allowed to obstruct the traffic proceeding behind it. And in addition, I have to mention also that there isn't determined nowhere in any rule this differentiation between a bus bay and the bus stop. But in spite of this, even by considering this differentiation as available, it turns out that the establishment in question fulfills entirely the requirements of the definition of a bus bay. Since the revision procedure was to be disputed and adjudicated by the Supreme Court's board through hearing in camera, on which I couldn't be present, I wrote a letter to them on which I explained and reasoned why the establishment on which I stopped is definitely a bus bay, and beside this I made a sketch from the scene of the occurrence. But to my astonishment, the Supreme Court, on its verdict, changed the acquittal sentence of the court and obliged me to pay the fine of 30,000 Hungarian forints and the costs and fees of the procedures implemented amounting to 72,500 Hungarian forints. Their argumentation was entirely understandable for me, since I don't know on which grounds they declared this establishment in question as a bus stop. After this, I made my complaints at the Hungarian Ombudsman and wrote a complaint letter to the Hungarian Judicatory Board, but their answer was that they can't do anything against a verdict of the Supreme Court. Since the only legal means against a verdict of the Supreme Court is the retrial, I looked through again all the documentation issued regarding this case. I can't say with certitude, just I suppose that the Supreme Court didn't pay any attention to my letter and to the sketch sent by myself to them, since otherwise it would become obvious to them that that establishment is a bus bay. Since the Supreme Court referred that they established their verdict by taking into the consideration the photos made by the police authorities, I checked this and realized that on this just my vehicle is to be portrayed, but not the area and the peripheries of the bus bay. As the only opportunity against a verdict of the Supreme Court is the retrial, and for having a proving a retrial is possible only through the producing of new evidences, I went at the place where this establishment, bus bay, stays, and made many photos about it and its area. After this, by considering these photos made by myself as new evidences, I submitted my applying for a retrial. However, as a result of another hearing in camera, on which I couldn't be present again. This application of mine was rejected by the Metropolitan Regional Courts Board on the grounds that these photos aren't to be considered as newly arisen proofs, and so there isn't any opportunity for a retrial. What's more, I was obliged to pay an additional amount of 18,000 Hungarian forint appealing fee. That's how my case is staying for the moment. Now, for the proving of my statements here on YouTube, I went and filmed the bus bay where I stopped my taxi vehicle. On the video following this one, so in the fourth video, you will see that this establishment fulfills totally the definition of a bus bay. Also, I filmed a bus station in order to have clarified the differences between the two types of establishments. I think that I did everything for defending my truth, but as it can be seen, the police authorities and the jurisdictional institutions had been made everything to prevent my acquittal. In my opinion, this denouement has two main reasons. As a first explanation, there is the current situation of the Hungarian fine politics. This means that the amount of money claimed previously and resulted from traffic offences has to be collected by all means. The second one is the attitude of the police authorities. This means that they can't digest that somebody proved that they were wrong. And as I've experienced in many cases, if an individual dares here in Hungary to disapprove and criticize the abuses of these authorities, he or she will find himself or herself shortly alone against the union of this. Nowadays, everybody has the right to express his objections against the Hungarian democratic system without being officially arrested, but there are many subtle and indirect methods for eliminating him or her. One of these methods is to make this person's financial position untenable. This danger is threatening me very seriously, since if this amount of 130 Hungarian forints will be collected, I will become bankrupt. This is my situation momently, in spite of the fact that I'm struggling hard day by day to avoid my financial collapse. So this was the second case. In the following video, so after in the fifth video, as a proof of my statements, please watch the film made at the place of this offense, in which you can see the establishment on the area of it I've stopped and evaded with my car. The final video, the fifth one, I will try to relate about the situation and about the situation of the middle class of Hungarian society, to which I'm appertaining momently, in order to make clear the situation about Hungarian people, about the Hungarian people's standard lives and everything like this. This is a kind of a political statement of mine.